Talk about Foreign Contribution Regulation Amendment Bill 2020, which has been cleared by the Parliament in the recently concluded monsoon session. And joining us for more on this particular topic is a distinguished panel of experts. Let me first introduce them to you, beginning with Mr. R.V.S. Mani, former Undersecretary with the Ministry of Home Affairs. We also have with us Mr. Chakshu Roy, Head of Outreach at PRS Legislative Studies, and Mr. K. Badrinath, Senior Journalist. Welcome all of you gentlemen to Rajya Sabha TV. Let me begin with you, Chakshu, and let's start by listing the main highlights, main points of this particular bill which has been passed by both houses in the monsoon session.
Thank you, Vishal. Vishal, before I start talking about the bill, I'll just put out a little context about what the bill is amending. So what the bill is doing is that it is making changes to a law that was made in the 1970s, which is called the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act. And what this original law was doing was that it was putting limitations on certain types of individuals and entities who could accept foreign contributions. So, for example, when the law was originally made, people who were contesting elections, could not accept foreign contributions for their election expenses. It also included members of the legislature, newspaper editors, owners of newspapers, leaders of political parties or office bearers of political parties. Then there was a big amendment to the law that took place in 2006 that added a couple of things. And one of those things was that under the 1976 law, to accept foreign donation or foreign contributions, you had to be registered under the law. And the 2006 amendment said that the registration will have to be renewed in every 6 months. So that was one big change. And it also added a few more categories of people who were prohibited from receiving foreign hospitality or foreign contributions. Now, the 2020 amendment is doing 2 or 3 big things. One of the things that it is doing is that it is saying that the functionaries of organizations which are registered under the FCRA law, they should be required to provide identification in the form of Aadhaar numbers. So that is one thing that it is doing.
Okay.
The second thing it is doing is that it is saying that all foreign contributions have to be accepted in a specified bank account of the State Bank of India in New Delhi. So that the rules, I'm assuming, will come out and they will say as to which that bank will be. The third thing that it's doing is that it is bringing public servants within the ambit of the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act. The next thing that it is doing, which is well worth noting, is earlier under the 1976 law, if you were an entity which was allowed to receive foreign contributions after you had fulfilled all the criteria, you could give some part of that contribution that you had received to another organization which was also registered under the FCRA law.
Okay.
So the current amendment that has been passed by Parliament is saying that that will no longer be possible. And the final major thing that the amendment bill is doing is it is saying that the administration expenses, so when you receive an X amount of foreign contribution to do the work that you're planning to do, the administration expenses or the administrative expenses cannot be more than 20%. That limit used to be 50%. That has now been brought to 20%. So that's roughly the things that the amendment law is doing.
Okay. Let me also bring in Mr. K. Badrinath here. Mr. Badrinath, your views on these amendments which have been brought into this particular bill now.
But Vishal, there are a couple of points I would like to make initially and take the discussion forward.
Okay.
As to what Chakshu Roy was saying, Right now, if you see the FCRA dashboard in the Home Ministry, there are about 49,843 NGOs in this country which can, accept foreign contribution. Until now, in the last decade or so, 20,664 NGOs FCRA clearances have been cancelled. As early as or as late as September, you have seen about 6 organizations whose foreign contributions, registrations have been cancelled. And henceforth, my guess is, some amount of, tightening of the norms seems to have been done. Second, the avowed objective of these norms will be to bring about more transparency into the working of NGOs, to make the people who are running these NGOs more, more responsible and accountable. This seems to be the focus because several of the NGOs have been accused. I'm not sure whether it is right, wrong, what it is, because I'm not party to this. But point is that there have been several instances where they have been accused of, diverting funds, misusing funds. Some of the key functionaries trying to take away the funds for their own personal users, showing a lot of administrative expenses and then, funneling this money away for some other activities. There are politicians who have several NGOs.
Okay.
There are bureaucrats who run NGOs. So point I'm trying to make is that some amount of tidiness needs to be brought into the NGO sector. This is what seems to be the avowed objective of the government, while NGOs are saying that, look, these norms are very harsh, unacceptable. Under these conditions, we cannot function whatsoever. I will only give you one example and stop there. Public Health Foundation of India was allowed foreign currency contribution, and recently it was barred. The reason given by the Home Ministry is that it was trying to lobby for the tobacco lobby.
Okay.
To manipulate the environment-related restrictions. The point I'm trying to say is the end use of money is very, very important. And the second point is there have been organizations who have used these funds for religious conversions as well, as per Home Ministry's point of view. But how much is it right, wrong, correct, wrong? I have no idea because I have no access to this.
Okay.
So this seems to be the issue where we land up.
So what you're saying, Mr. Badrinath, and seems to be the objective here, is to bring in accountability for those who receive a foreign contribution, be it the NGOs or the individuals as well. Let me bring in Mr. RVS Mani here. Mr. Mani, from your perspective, how do you perceive the provisions in this particular bill which has been cleared by the Parliament, specifically the two provisions, one with respect to public servants and the other bringing in Aadhaar as well here. That, seems to be with the aim of ensuring that accountability as well.
Aadhaar, see, foreign contribution earlier from it was being done. There were NGOs which were registered under Societies Registration Act. But now many of them are coming out as Section 25 companies also. So Aadhaar, see, Section 25, Societies Registration Act also, as well as in Section 25 companies, they already have it. For example, Companies Act insists on the nationality details under the provisions are there, that the individuals promoting, key management personnel promoting, they could be held responsible. So their personal details are already the company law board. Here there are huge amount of money coming in. See, for example, Mr. Badrinath had raised a question about something about conversions and all, religious conversions. I will take you to 2017-18 MHA dashboard. 18,000 plus crores were received in that year. You can verify.
Okay.
12,000 crores were received by Christian organizations. Around 5,500. These are all rough figures. Maybe a crore here or there. Maybe I'm giving you the trend. 5,500 crores were received by Islamic organizations, and around 500 crores were received by organizations which were filing vexatious litigations, PILs, repeatedly filing PILs against all development policies, and that was the reasons for cancellation based on their activities. Certain cancellations did take place right from 2016, 15 or 16, it has been happening. And this was the basic reason for that. Repeatedly, they were challenging the integrity of India. They were a threat to the national security and all, both in terms of vexatious litigations as well as in terms of creating a communal cauldron here, especially those who were, besides that in 2009 also for certain amendments and the rules were made, modifications to suit to the FATF benchmarks. At the time I was there. So this is the overall picture of Foreign Contribution Regulation Act. Certain stronger regulations have been introduced. At the larger picture, basically foreign contributions, the NGOs work is where the corporates and the government do not enter into. We should have been, or supplemental works like Public Health Foundation of India, tobacco awareness or non-awareness of tobacco threat. So many things are there. It is a stated fact that certain foreign contributions are used to peddle a particular narratives which could be challenging to the security of the nation, integrity of the nation.
Okay.
Certain organizations are there like the Citizens of Justice or the Jan Sanghar Samiti, or there are so many others who have been found collecting money and taking away for personal ends or for personal use, etc.
Okay.
The restrictions on administrative expenses also is very vital because many people, the foot soldiers who carry out these type of narratives are listed as workers of particular, say some Greenpeace or anything like that. Whether it is happening in the Sterlite case in Tamil Nadu, or there are so many other places where these litigations, these animal welfare things and all those things have happened, where they were perpetuating a hidden agenda of somebody else from outside the country.
Okay.
Also, you go to the growth of institutions in the Indo-Bangladesh, Indo-Nepal border, both sides, especially the Indian side of it, within the 5 kilometers of the border, so many school, religious institution, religious educational institution, religious structures of groups have come up, which are again perpetuating certain agenda being propagated from across the border over loudspeakers. I am partly to have inspected this. So these are all the things which warranted immediate action, and that is the reason these amendments, in fact, I feel are a little bit long overdue.
Okay. Long overdue from the accountability perspective, Mr. Mani. But one more aspect here, as I was, pointing out earlier, how do you view the public servants aspect as far as this particular bill is concerned? The way that category has been dealt with.
It was also there because public servants also, even though it is not, I don't know to what extent they have dealt with it, but they're being proscribed about that is very good, especially members of the legal community. Public servants also includes judges. Many members of the legal community have got elevated to the judiciary. Even otherwise, the judiciary always comes from the community, whether it is in the lower level courts or wherever the judiciary or practicing member only mostly gets elevated. That is one, and there are many public servants who also run other type of NGOs like working on children's nutrition and all. How much of things, what are they propagating? Already there are a lot of disengagements or conduct rules do provide for that, but still we have outside the boundary of conduct rules, if they are able to set up an NGO and do activities which are not especially this happens in Kashmir. We have had cases of a sitting IAS officer who later is quit, running an NGO there. Like that, there are many such cases already gallowed. So that is where it has been dealt with very well. Right. Thank you.
Okay. Chakshu, your views on, you spoke about provisions, but now that both Mr. Badrinath and Mr. Mani are pointing out how it is really, really important to bring in accountability in certain aspects. So if we look at all these provisions, be it, ensuring that Aadhaar is mandatory or bringing down the limit of the administrative expenditure, or, certifying the registration process as well, ensuring that the account is in a particular bank and then the money gets transferred into any other particular branch or bank for utilization. So how does this actually impact the implementation part on the ground as far as these organizations are concerned?
Vishal, I think Mr. Mani, because he's been, deeply associated with the working of the law, he'll be better able to talk about how does it actually implement on the ground. I wanted to, take you to the objects and reasons of the bill. Mm-hmm. And in the objects and reasons of the bill, the minister piloting the bill talked about the fact as to what has led to the bill being brought to Parliament. Okay. And the minister pointed out in the objects of reasons 2 or 3 reasons. Now, one of the reasons that the minister pointed out was that there are statutory compliances that have to be met under the law. Now, some of these statutory compliances are about filing of annual returns, maintaining of accounts, submission of returns to the government. And in the statement of objects and reasons, it was pointed out that many of these statutory compliances were not met, because of which cancellations had to take place. Okay. So that is one part of it. The other part of it is that when the registrations were cancelled, it also led to certain investigations that had to be initiated against certain organizations. Uh-huh. Then the statement of objects and reasons also talked about the fact as to whether the contributions that were being received were being appropriately utilized for the purpose for which they were received. So, and to ensure that and the limit to ensure that was earlier 50% when it came to administrative expenses, and the statement of objects and reasons said that is why that limit is being brought down to 20%. Mm-hmm. Now, this is a law which also works on the basis of delegated legislation or rules that are formed under the law. And a lot of clarity about how it will work will have to come under that. Okay. I also wanted to, just add to while you had not asked me that question, I just wanted to add a bit on the public servants. Now, what has also happened is that the government, in the legitimate course of its business, also establishes trusts and societies where a senior public official, in his official capacity, might be represented as a member of the society or as a member of the trust. Mm-hmm. So possibly that's also a reason as to why that to ensure that compliances are fully met, that the definition of public servants has been included. Okay. And public servants has been defined as under the Indian Penal Code. So basically anybody who receives government remuneration is roughly what my idea, but I'm sure Mr. Badri and Mr. Mani will clarify. Okay. So now that the bill has been passed by 2 houses, the way forward will be that it will now go to the president for his approval. And then when the Gazette notification comes out for operationalizing the law, then it will become the law of the land. Okay.
Definitely, that is the process which will be followed as it is done for all other bills as well once they're passed by both houses of parliament. Mr. Badrinath, on the implementation part and the public servants aspect of it, how do you view these provisions ensuring that statutory compliance, which as Chakshu was pointing out, the bill's objectives, the statement of objectives of the bill itself says that the reason was that the statutory compliance was very low.
Oh, yes. Many of the NGOs or societies or the Section 25 companies which are non-profitable in nature, many of them do not comply for several reasons. One is the compliance cost itself is a little bit of a hassle. Second part is, many a time the funds may not have been utilized for the purpose that it has been designated and for which it has been brought in. And third issue is many a time your administrative costs are much more than the actual funds that is required to run a program for the intended beneficiaries.
Okay.
So what happens there is, say for example, you have about 1 crore rupees, and if you are going to spend more than 60 lakhs only on your travel, study, and going around, then it will be when the beneficiaries may not be benefited at all. So point I'm trying to make is that restrictions on the the administrative expenses is very well justified, but a little bit harsh. Where the genuine NGOs who work there in remotest parts of this country and which actually want to bring about a transformational socio-economic change at the grassroots may not be able to do if you were to strictly comply with this provision.
Okay.
Second part of the story is corruption in NGOs is a very, very huge factor as well. Even if there are very few NGOs which have been accused of corruption, my guess is this has brought a bad name to the entire NGO sector, where community organizations are supposed to supplement and complement the efforts made by the government.
Okay.
Right? That's the case.
Okay.
So corruption is an issue also there.
Definitely. Definitely. Corruption in NGOs is also an issue, and that again brings back us to the question of accountability, which again binds it to the objectives of this particular bill. Mr. Mani, concluding comments from you before we bring this to an end on what significance or what significant achievements we might expect on the ground when these provisions are implemented once the entire process of gadget notification and assent from the president is received.
The first thing is this thing of money in their accounts. There's a lot of accumulation of money by these NGOs. Many of them, many prominent ones, have huge tranches of money in their reserves, cash reserves, which is itself a very biggest giveaway that the end have not been ended. It is being also used for creating assets and accumulation of profits and all that. Defeats the national non-profit concept, because everybody is accumulating. You can see the bank statements. There are very clear reports about it. The capital formation should not happen in an NPO sector. So it runs contrary to that. Number one.
Okay.
Number two is the single bank thing is the biggest check on that. Number two is as about the administrative costs and travel costs. There have been instances that when an initiative was taken in the Naxal affected area, chartered planes used to carry volunteers from Delhi and other places to rise and stand in protest against that government initiatives. This is a matter of record in the government of India. So these are all things which are shown as administrative expenses within quotes. And it happened not only in Naxal affected, it also has happened in Northeast sector also, in Jammu and Kashmir sector also it happens.
Okay.
certain money are routed through to go to the stone pelting also. There's so many things there are which needs to be addressed. So that is the reason I said it is long overdue. It has come. You can see huge changes in that. Besides the religious conversion, vexatious litigation and other things, these are all anti-India, anti-state policies which have been funded by these NGOs, which will come under control.
Okay.
I hope it comes under control. There may be other means and ways which they may resort, but not the FCRA means. That's
Okay.
what I wanted.
Okay, there it is.